Alright, let's get through these last 10 years later videos for September before the end of year thing that happens where I'm going to be looking at a bunch of different albums for this series, as well as just new albums that I'm going to do my typical short reviews of. Let's for once get through these 10 years later videos for a given month while it is still that given month. Welcome back to 10 Years Later, the series where I talk about albums from the 2010s that were either impactful to me, impactful to music in general, very popular, or just worth revisiting 10 years later for good or bad reasons. And as you can tell from the title, the album that we'll be talking about today is the 2011 blink-182 record Neighborhoods. This was the sixth studio album from famed pop-punk legends blink-182, and it was also their first studio album in 8 years. For history on that, after the group's Untitled 2003 album, fans had become concerned with the band taking on something of a more mature direction, and there were some tensions between the bandmates. Seemingly, they had been under a grueling schedule, and Tom DeLonge had wanted to spend more time with his family. This led to the announcement of an indefinite hiatus, or as we sometimes like to call them, breakup, in 2005, which lasted until about 2008 when major tragedy struck several members of the group. First, former producer Jerry Finn, who really was a key part in polishing the group's pop-punk sound, suffered a cerebral hemorrhage and passed away, while Travis Barker was involved in a plane crash that left him with second and third degree burns as well as post-traumatic stress disorder. All of these incidents led to the group coming back together with each other and making another album. Out came this, a 14-track, 49-minute record that embraced alt-rock as much as punk rock, and one that had a hard time getting released. The album went through a tumultuous period in regards to its creation, with the band members recording the album in bits and pieces in completely different locations. Tom DeLonge would record his parts in his San Diego studio, while Mark Hoppus and Travis Barker recorded their parts in Los Angeles, and the group would communicate ideas through emails. Supposedly, this was not done because of any friction within the band. Yeah, okay. But rather to accommodate the busy schedules of each member who were also working on solo projects. The album was delayed several times, the process became a mess of managers and attorneys, Mark and Tom wouldn't talk to each other for months on end, and when the album finally came out, some critics, unsurprisingly, noted that the record felt very disjointed. Even the band members themselves would concede that the recording process was a terrible idea, with Mark even accusing Tom of not listening to the mixes or masters or even caring about the record as a whole. Soap opera aside, now that I've listened to the album as a whole, you might be surprised to know my biggest critique of the record isn't any disjointedness. Personally, I don't think it totally sounds disjointed, but my issue is that it just doesn't stand out as much as some of Blink's other records. Ghost on the Dance Floor kicks off the album with something a lot brighter than the group's previous stuff, almost feeling like it's moving into something of a new wave direction. I do love the energy and flow of the instrumental, and I think as a new direction it definitely worked, but I think I'm a little more iffy on Tom DeLonge's vocals here. I don't mind the deeper tone, but there are parts where they sound a bit more drowned out by the instrumental and just not as exciting as some of his best vocal lines. Maybe it's also that I don't find the chorus all that interesting either. Could be that. Native starts off with this super cool guitar riffing, and then it evolves into something that's naturally pretty pounding. It's another track where I think the instrumental is cool and fits with the typical Blink-182 vibes, but I'm really trying to get myself to enjoy the vocals. Both Tom and Mark are kind of drowned out a bit, and I find that both of them don't sound like they're all the way in it vocally. Tom doesn't have his usual energy, and Mark just sounds kind of flat and bored, while his hook kind of goes in one ear and out the other. Up All Night also feels like a bit of a change from their previous stuff, with some very dark lyrics to it as well. A lot of this album feels a lot darker than their past stuff, and this is another example. I like the way that Tom and Mark trade off vocal passages here, but once again, I think the track just fails to really hook me in. A lot of my love for Blink has been helped by the fact that the group always knew how to put together extremely catchy and immediate hooks that just never left my head. With a lot of the hooks on this album, it kind of feels like they don't even enter my head, sadly. Snake Charmer was a bonus track included on the deluxe edition of the album, which is weird since it was stuck right in the middle. I do enjoy the throbbing pace of the guitar, which pretty much permeates the entire song, but I struggle to find as much else that really grabbed me about it. The hook was passable, Tom sounded okay, it just wasn't nearly as memorable as some of Blink's other songs. Heart's All Gone Interlude is also a bonus track from the deluxe edition, and it's a 2-minute instrumental cut with a very soft tone to it. There's a very nice haziness to it with a dark vibe that almost feels reminiscent of something off of Linkin Park's A Thousand Suns. I don't usually go head over heels with instrumental interludes, but this one was just too damn enjoyable. I just kinda wish I liked the actual song Heart's All Gone a bit more. When it kicked on, it was a complete change of pace from the interlude. It was a fast-paced, louder version of the song that, for lack of a better comparison, almost sounded like something that could be in Digimon the movie. I like that part of it, but this was another track pretty much undone by a forgettable hook. Even though Mark does what he can with the song, the chorus is so understructured to the point where it's just forgettable. This Is Home is another bright jam with a much more bustling feel to it with its bigger drums and more pronounced guitars. I'll be honest, it's one of the cuts I find myself a bit less engaged with. While the instrumental sounds great and Tom's vocals are not bad, this is another track that just has a frightening lack of a good hook, and that stops it from being as memorable as it could have been. It's sad because I like when Blink takes on these lighter, more emotional tracks, but for me, this one just isn't grabbing me. That said, there are quite a few songs that did grab me. After Midnight is a pretty notable song in Blink's discography, being the last single the group released that included Tom DeLonge before his departure from the band. It's a brighter track that feels a bit more mid-tempo than some of the other ones here, and I honestly kind of like it. I do still think the instrumental can drown Mark out a bit, and the song does carry that disjointed feel that came from the weird way of recording. But the hook itself is catchy, it fits well with the instrumental, and it's a nice, pretty mellow jam with a decent lyrical story about a complex relationship between two damaged people. Wishing Well was the one song from this record that I knew very well before listening to it fully. One of my closest friends first showed me the song when we were in high school, and it quickly became one that I listened to very frequently. It's one of those times where the big, brighter instrumental mixes perfectly with Tom's vocals. His vocal passages are incredibly catchy, and it feels like he comes through with multiple hooks that really work. It's also another interesting example of how Blink can make such a poppy, bright song that still features some dark lyrics under the surface. Kaleidoscope takes things a lot lighter, almost feeling like a very sunny jam with an emotional edge to it. I think both Mark and Tom sound great on the song, and they manage to craft something that has a very immediate snappiness to it. I like when they make songs in this kind of direction where more of the emotion shines through, and this is another wonderful example of that. MH418-2011 is a song Mark had on his computer, hence the MH, it's his initials, and the group just decided to throw it on the album with that name because it sounded like a virus? Sure, I suppose so. Either way, this is a song I really enjoy. I think Mark's vocal melodies are some of his catchiest ones on the album, and they fit with the song's vibrant, sunny, upbeat instrumental. It's one of the rare moments where I feel like Mark isn't drowned out by the production, and he really helps sell the track and make it a nice highlight. Love is Dangerous was the closer to the standard edition of the album, and initially it started in this very mysterious direction, almost sounding like it was going to be something entirely different that Blink hadn't done before. It wasn't, but that doesn't mean I didn't enjoy the mid-tempo feel of the instrumental and the emotional vibe. Initially, I wasn't too sure how to feel about the vocals because it sounded like Tom was a little bit more filtered, but after a while the melodies grew on me a bit and I ended up quite liking it. As the end of the standard edition, this was a good track to finish with. Except it's not the end of the album because 2 of the 4 bonus tracks from the deluxe edition are at the tail end. Fighting the Gravity dives specifically into Mark Hoppus's experience with drugs. Not sure if it's based on a true story, but seemingly someone slipped a drug into his drink that made him feel like he was dying. Friendly reminder, by the way, don't do that. Please and thank you. Anyway, the instrumental has this very spacey feel reminiscent of A Trip, and it seems like it was inspired a bit by some of Tom DeLonge's work with Angels and Airwaves. I do like the vibe of it, and Mark's performance fits perfectly with the dark, harrowing lyrics as well. Even If She Falls properly closes the album with a very upbeat, catchy love song. Seems the group wanted this as the final track of the deluxe edition because they wanted to finish things off on a bit of a positive note. Good choice, by the way. It's very nice, somehow feeling simultaneously pounding but also mellow with very smooth vocals from Tom and some sweet lyrics as well. I'm glad the group chose to end on this note. It's a really nice cut. But overall, Neighborhoods is an album that may be more interesting for the drama and the soap opera that accompanied it than the music itself. Instrumentally, it sounds like the group didn't skip a beat, and their ability to craft compelling, exciting tracks that mix pop, punk, and alternative sounds remains just as strong here. At times, both Mark and Tom show some of that vocal ability that made them so solid, and even for that disjointedness, there are some genuine moments of good chemistry here, even though both of them can get drowned out every once in a while. The big issue I have with this thing is just how little it hooks. One of the things that always made Blink-182 Blink-182 so compelling and made them one of my personal favorite bands was their ability to make songs with extremely catchy, immediate hooks that never left your head. Memorability was one of the big things that made Blink so great. You couldn't get those songs unstuck from your head and you kinda didn't want to. Here, there are a lot of tracks that just hardly register. They just kinda lack much stickiness or immediacy. And when a group like this, that's one of my favorite bands, can't hook me in, there's a problem. All in all, I thought it was very fascinating reading about a lot of the friction with the band, and I was very interested in learning about the rocky road that led to this album's creation. I just wish that listening to the album itself was half as interesting as that was. Back in 2011, I wasn't as familiar with Blink as I am now, but I liked them enough that I could have enjoyed this album. Listening to it today, it's fine, though not one of my favorite things the group has put out. If I had to put it on my scale, it'd probably get an okay rating. It has some decent tracks, but it's not a Blink record I feel like I'd return to all that often. Hell, as much as people hate it, I kind of prefer their newest album, 9, over this. Hot take, I know, but yeah, that's just how I feel. Of course, that's just my opinion on this record. What did you guys think about it? Did you listen to it back in 2011? Do you still listen to it now? Did you love it back then? Hate it back then? Love it now? Hate it now? Are you just completely indifferent towards it? And where do you rank it among Blink-182's other albums? Whatever your thoughts and experiences are, leave them down in the comments below. Let's keep this civil and have some fun as we like to do. If you guys want to hit like and subscribe and support some of my other ventures that I have linked in the description, thank you. If not, it's no big deal. I totally understand. And as soon as I turn this video off, I'm going to film the last of these September 10 Years Later videos, which will be on J. Cole's Cole World: The Sideline story. That's going to be an exciting one to talk about, so stay tuned for that. But until next time, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.